All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us here. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. We're here with Chris Jorgensen, and we're discussing how he became a digital nomad instructional designer here. So, Chris was teaching for years, both abroad and in Canada, where he's from. And he decided he wanted to become an instructional designer. I met him last year through the boot camp. And then he also decided that he wanted to travel abroad. So, we kind of connected on that because that's part of what led me into this field. And I know there are other people out there who are interested in doing this as well. So that's what this session is about. We're going to learn about how Chris was able to like land work and start working from his laptop, as well as kind of what drew him to ID and what inspired him to travel abroad while working. So I
Yeah.
have some questions prepared here. You all are free to ask questions as well. Use that Q&A tab if you can and upvote the ones you want to see answered. And after we get through these questions, we will get to all of your questions. Sound good, everybody? Oh, nice. We have people coming in from all over today, so very cool.
Wow.
All right. So, oh yeah. So, Chris, where are you calling in from now on your travels?
So I'm currently in southern France in a place called Montpellier.
Nice.
We've been here for about a week. It's just beautiful. Like it's a mid-sized city. And we're staying here with some friends from Canada, and it's just been excellent. The weather's great, the food's great, and I've definitely had lots of bread and cheese, you know, as the French
Nice.
do when
Yeah.
in Rome.
Yeah, and last time we spoke, you were in Berlin, and yeah, you've been living your best life on these Europe travels. But let's maybe back it up back to when you were still in Canada, or maybe even when you were teaching abroad. Like when, like what? Yeah, when did you decide instructional design was right for you, or how did that get on your radar?
Yeah, so I was teaching. I was first, like you said, I was teaching internationally in South Korea for 2 years, and then I was in China for about 3 years. And I had been like in Asia for most of my adult life. Well, in my 20s, I should say. And it was time to go home. And like I thought, geez, this is kind of intimidating. I've never actually taught in my own country. But I went home and, I was so worried about finding a job, and I found a teaching job like right away. And like kind of everything like fell into place. It seemed like I got a job, and then like I found a great deal on a car, and then I met my girlfriend, and everything seemed to be going so well. Um, I started teaching, and I was teaching for about 2 years, and it was awesome. Like I really enjoyed teaching. I love kids. I love coaching. I love, you know, uh, getting to know younger people and inspiring them. But during COVID, things got really hectic. There wasn't much support at my school. And around this time, I started to look at different options besides teaching. Um, During COVID, I was working from home for a lot of the time. And I was thinking, like, this is really great. Like, I could get
Yeah.
used to this. Um, I don't necessarily always want to be the center of attention all the time in front of a class. And, it'd be nice to see what else is out there. So I decided kind of in that moment, like I was looking online, I found lots of your videos that you had posted on YouTube, and I read all your articles and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is really great. Like instructional design seemed really cool. And it was in line with some of the stuff that I was doing. I was really interested in development of lesson plans and whatnot. And I thought that would carry over, that skill set would carry over as well. So I knew the field existed. It was just a matter of like, how do I get recognized in this field? How do I get a job? So like in the very beginning, I kind of went about it the traditional way, just applying for lots of jobs, and like I used my teacher resume, and I didn't have much luck in the beginning. But then that's why when I decided I was going to join your boot camp to get a bit more experience and learn how to use the development tools. and also start doing some volunteering with a local nonprofit so that I could get
Nice.
some experience on my resume and a reference and, feel good at the same time, like helping a nonprofit. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how I
Maybe
got started.
maybe people have follow-up questions on that because that is a really good way to get experience. I know people, have some trouble with that, but so maybe we'll
Yeah,
save that. If anyone has questions about that, feel free to ask them and vote on them, but, maybe we'll get back around to the volunteering you did because,
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Like, and
nice
I think
work.
that was a recommendation based on one of your articles.
Yeah.
Like I just thought it made sense, and like even according to that survey that you do, experience is really important, like to
Yeah.
get a job. And I thought volunteering was the best way to get experience. And I used that volunteering experience to leverage into my first like part-time ID role.
Okay.
And I used that to like get a longer, shorter term job. And I just kind of jumped and jumped and jumped. And it worked really well.
Okay, okay, good. So that was your approach. So, because yeah, when I announced this session, which was really interesting to me, you're like landing all of this contract work and everything. You don't even have a finished portfolio to show, and you're like, really successful with this from like everything that I can tell. But that seems to be a key part of your approach. Yeah, you were able to kind of trade up your experience to get kind of better and better opportunities, like volunteering to like part time to like better contracts. It seems like. Is that
Yeah.
how you
Yeah.
kind of view your approach or what worked so well for you?
Yeah. I think that experience combined with just working on some initial iterations for my portfolio and kind of getting it up and running as fast as I could. Um, my philosophy was to get something like that I could use to show employers and, perfect it as I went. You know, I just
Yeah.
wanted to really jump in the pool with both feet. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably dive deeper into that, but let's let's kind of rewind a bit. So
Sure.
when you kind of got more set on instructional design, like were you like I want to work from my computer so that I can travel abroad, or were you like I like working remotely, things are going great here in Canada. I'm just gonna try to get like just work from my place, or like when did the whole like digital nomad piece kind of come into play?
So you know what? That part actually started a long time ago.
Okay.
And I think like you, Devlin, one of the perks of the job was the fact that I could do it remotely. And
Yep.
in many instances, I could do it um, from anywhere in the world. So like years and years ago when I was like teaching as an international teacher, I was traveling in Thailand and I met this guy in a hostel and he had his laptop out and we got talking and he was a digital nomad. He wasn't an instructional designer, but I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world that he could just like work his job from wherever he was.
Yeah.
At the time, I think like this is well before COVID, but I think that like there weren't as many jobs that allowed you to work remotely, but it was always like an idea that was in my head like, wow, if I could ever find a way to do this, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like after coming back from Asia, like before Asia, I was 22 years old. I had never traveled. And then after going to Asia, I had all these opportunities to travel on my vacations, and I was able to go to all these different countries.
Yeah.
And so it was really like appealing to me. And when I came home and then fell into COVID, I wasn't really able to do much more traveling. And I'm like, this is really too bad. So definitely a perk of the job was the fact that I could do it remotely. Now, mind you, not every job allows you to be able to work remotely from different countries. Just because a job says that it's remote doesn't necessarily mean you can leave the country. So that's an important point, I think.
Yeah.
There are some companies that do allow you to work internationally. But as an employee, there are only a few companies that I would know of that lets you travel the world. Some of the bigger tech companies. So contract work, however, is a different thing. And
Yeah.
that's basically what I've been doing, is working contract jobs, full transparency, being honest and letting everyone know what I was doing. And yeah, it's been working really well.
Nice. Yeah, I can relate to that journey very well. Yeah, when I was like 20, studied abroad, left the country for the first time, and then we studied abroad in London. Every weekend we were like going somewhere else in Europe, and I was like, yeah, this is like amazing. And then I would go back to like Tallahassee, Florida, like back to school for like years, and it's just like I have that constant urge to like travel again basically. Like when am I going to be able to travel again? How am I going to make that work? I was looking at like teaching in like grad school. And I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe on summers as a teacher and like when grad school, maybe doing like grants and stuff, like doing research abroad or something. But then when I found out about instructional design, same idea. Yeah, I didn't really expect to make it work as a full-time employee, but I'm like, it seems like there's freelance work and contracts out there. I don't see why they would care where I am in the world. This is maybe like some wild idea, but it seems like it would be possible. So I'm just gonna give it like my all and 100% and go towards it. um,
Exactly, right? Yeah,
yeah,
no.
same thing. It was such a cool idea. Like, yeah, I could be, like, sitting on a train working from my laptop. Like, I was like, "Sign me up for that." That was very appealing to me. So
Yeah.
that's cool. And yeah, I remember having that conversation with you, like, probably a little under a year ago, and you were, like, telling me how you wanna make this happen, how you wanna, do 6 months in Europe, basically. And I'm like, "It's possible." Like, it's definitely possible.
Yeah,
So,
and you know what? I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to, like, how much do you really wanna do something, right? Because, I think for most people, if you ask them, like, "Do you wanna travel?" Almost everyone would say yes. But obviously, everyone's life circumstance is a little bit different, and, everyone kind of prioritizes things differently.
yeah,
Like I have friends who have a similar background to me who, prefer to buy a new truck or like buy a bigger house rather than travel outside of the country
yeah,
and work as a digital nomad. And kudos to them. That's pretty cool too in its own way. But my girlfriend and I decided like we're going to do this and we're going to find a way to do it no matter what.
yeah,
And I think that mindset was definitely helpful uh, in making it happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
And let's get into that a bit more, but I see some great questions coming in the chat. Feel free to ask them in that Q&A tab. Once we get through these ones, we're going to answer all of your questions. So keep the good questions coming. But yeah, can you talk a bit about like that mindset? Like, was it kind of like anxiety inducing when you're like, we're going to do this, we're going to make it happen? Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, leaving everything behind, working from your laptop, like, what was that?
You
Was
know
it
what?
hard?
It was nerve-wracking. Like, it was very nerve-wracking. In the beginning, we weren't sure where we were going to go. We just knew we wanted to travel.
Yeah,
Um, my girlfriend really wanted to go to New Zealand, and, like, we thought about it, and we were like, "Ah, that's quite far." Like, maybe we'll get back there one day, but Europe seems to be, a bit easier, because we had some friends there and whatnot. Um, but at the end of the day, like we knew we wanted to do this during COVID, and we thought about it and planned it like very early. Um, One of the things that we did was we started putting money away, of course, because we wanted to prepare for the worst case scenario. The worst case
yeah,
scenario being that, maybe a contract wouldn't work out in the way that we thought it would, or maybe we spend more money than we thought we would, and just kind of go from there. And yeah, so we ended up like booking Airbnbs for 6 different countries. So we decided we were going to spend a month in each country, and we were going to book an Airbnb for each one. Now, I didn't even really know this until I started going, but if you book Airbnbs by the month, you actually have a discounted rate. And so it's not like you're paying like a 1 day rate and timesing it by 30. Like you have a much cheaper rate. So it was actually cheaper than our rent, like in
Nice.
Canada, to like do this like for every month. So we're like, this makes sense. And we weren't exactly staying in like, you know, dirty places or places that weren't clean or anything. Like, they weren't necessarily always the biggest, but they were comfortable
Yeah.
and they were clean. So that was one of the things that we did to kind of like um, relieve the anxiety. We had all the places booked, and we thought, okay, that will have to be like probably one of the biggest things that we can plan that will make us feel a little bit better and more prepared. Like we plan them, they're paid for. So we did that. Another thing we did was we decided to get a visa. Now, for Americans and Canadians, you can spend 3 months in Europe before you have to actually start, looking into visas to stay longer. Obviously, that's kind of broad generalization. Like there are certain situations, but overall, you can spend 3 months like in EU Schengen countries, they call them. So we decided to stay longer. We were going to get a visa for Portugal. So we got the visa was called like the youth mobility visa, and it was a bit of paperwork, but we just wanted it for peace of mind,
Yeah.
and we got it. And the good thing about the visa, and for a lot of the visas in Europe, is that it gives you free reign to travel to other countries. So
Yeah.
even though we started in Portugal, we didn't necessarily have to stay in Portugal for that specific visa. So we had the visa in place, we had all our places booked, and we had a little bit of money saved. We didn't have enough money to like last the whole trip, but like, um, like we thought we'll figure it out. We'll find a way to make it work. And
Nice.
that's what we did. Yeah.
Cool. So that was enough for you. Yeah, you knew you had your places covered. I'm imagining you probably had your flight and you had a little bit left over, and you were like, we're going to make it work. I've got my trusty laptop. I'll have an internet connection and I have this skill set that I know is, in demand. So let's maybe dive a bit deeper into that piece, like the actual
Yeah.
work piece. Cause this wasn't like, oh yeah, 6 month vacation, live off of savings. You're like, we're going to work and travel and enjoy ourselves. So, you are already landing some instructional design work. You said you volunteered, you got a part-time job. I'm imagining that was in Canada. When did you
Yep.
start getting the contract work? Was that while you were still in Canada?
No, I didn't start getting contract work. Well, there was a smaller company that I did something with, but I didn't really start getting like longer contracts until I got to Europe.
Wow, okay, so that's
So
that's interesting. You're like, I'm gonna make this work. I don't have the contracts yet, but I'm gonna get them." So
yeah,
what
yeah. Like I knew the field existed.
Yeah,
I knew that there were people working in the field,
yeah,
and in my mindset, I was just saying, like, I just need to find a way in, and then I'll be okay. Like, if people look at my resume and they see I have a little bit of experience, if they see like some of my portfolio stuff, then and they see I have a good skill set, then my theory was that it would work out fine. And like you mentioned earlier at Devlin, I wasn't finished my portfolio. Like, it wasn't completely finished. So what I did was I just took some screenshots and I put it on a Google Doc, like the screenshots, and I described my process.
nice.
And yeah, it ended up working really well. Like that was enough for a lot of the employers. That combined with my experience. I also talked about some of the other work that I had done with other companies and clients, and the combination of those things was enough. But I guess a different approach that I did take was that, like in the beginning, I was applying for a lot of jobs on job boards, and it just seemed like you're shooting fish in a barrel. Like it was like really kind of hard to stand out. Like there were so many people with like a similar amount of experience as me or more who were also applying for that job. So I took a different approach, and I decided what I was going to do was uh, well, one thing was try networking more on LinkedIn. And, that worked out really well. Like people started contacting me on LinkedIn as I filled out my profile and started posting a bit more. That was a big
Nice.
one. And another major one was um, I actually just Googled like instructional design companies in, fill in the blank, whatever state or province you're in. And I had a list there. And I actually like wrote down the emails for every single company. And I went on all of their websites and I looked into it. And the ones that I was most interested in, I just sent them an email and I said, "Hey, my name is Chris. Um, I like how you did, I like your philosophy toward this element of instructional design. And I've attached my resume and some samples from my portfolio." And it worked out really well. Like I had quite a
Wow.
few. I think it was more of like I was contacting places before they were posting like a need for an instructional designer. So like I was kind of getting them before they posted the job.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them were like, okay, well, this is easier rather than going through all that process. We had this guy who emailed us and his portfolio looks good and his experience looks good. So let's go for it.
Very nice. Okay. So
Yeah.
you built up some experience volunteering, part-time job. You had some examples you could talk about. Then you optimized your LinkedIn profile. You started posting and you're getting some leads through there. I'm guessing from recruiters or just teams who need some ID help. And then you actually use direct outreach too, which we don't talk about as much here. We haven't talked to many people who have done that successfully, but sounds like you're doing it pretty well. Yeah, you got your resume kind of cleaned up. You had some screenshots or Google Docs to show off to show that you know enough. Like you have a process that you use. You know what you're talking about. It might not be a super polished final product, and then you just kind of yeah cold
Yeah.
outreach. Hey,
And
I
it,
like
and it-
this. Yeah,
yeah, like, I know like I've heard of some people that haven't had the best luck with that kind of outreach, but
yeah,
Um, I think one of the things that I did was I tried to keep it short and I
yeah,
tried to keep it personal. So like every single company I was contacting, it wasn't like I was using like one generic like email.
yeah,
Like I was personalizing it. And I was only contacting the companies that like seemed like their instructional design philosophy aligned with mine. Like,
yeah.
in many cases, like I used their first name, like, things like that to make it like you were emailing like a friend or someone rather than, you know, just an anonymous company, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Nice. So you
And
kept it personal, you did your research, you were able to connect on whatever you learned from that research. And the people you're reaching out to, the companies you're reaching out to, they are like ID agencies. Like they do instructional design and e-learning work for clients. And you know that they're going to need a pool of talent who can basically help complete those projects. So that's the type of companies you were looking for, the agencies.
exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Subcontracting work primarily. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's how I think 99% of, like, freelancers are getting started in this space is by subcontracting, learning the ropes, yeah, building your network, basically, seeing how all these different companies do stuff, so that's awesome, yeah, and you can make a great living doing that for your entire career doing subcontract work, so there's nothing wrong with people who stay doing that the entire time too, so very cool. That's yeah, smart that you kinda recognize that need and you're like, "I'll happily fill that need." Yeah, and I'll make it easier for you to fill that need too by going right where you need me, so you don't even have to put up a listing for it. So, I could see how that would be effective. Very good.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so that's how you land the work, and then how do your clients feel about you working from your laptop while you're traveling Europe? Have you had any pushback on that? Yeah, you said you're transparent about it.
Yeah. I think honesty is the best policy.
Yeah,
I've told every company that I've worked with about what I was doing, and I would really not recommend, trying to do it in a sneaky way because, um, in this era of technology and the internet, like there's a very good chance that you would get caught and your reputation would be hurt by that.
yeah,
So I've been very forthcoming about it with all the companies that I've applied to. Mind you, a lot of the companies that I have applied to, they're already hiring people in different countries. So they're used to like working with people in different time zones.
Hmm.
Um, there were a couple situations where like you're oftentimes if you're working for one of these agencies, they'll give you an email and like a login for like the Google Gmail suite and whatever. And there were a couple occasions where like I got contacted by the security, cybersecurity people, just like, hey, like, your computer like says you're in like Hungary. Like, is that you? Like, and it's just like, yeah, that's me. Like, no worries. But yeah, I was very transparent with all the supervisors, and in fact, they were quite excited.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, like a lot of people have a love for travel, and
Hmm.
yeah, they respected the fact that I was doing this after COVID. I think after COVID, a lot of people wanted to do a similar thing. So yeah, it worked out well. And once again, honesty was the best policy. Contracting work was really the easiest way to do this. Um, yeah.
And so when you did get abroad and you started, you know, getting these clients, like you had a lot of contract work, didn't you? Like you
Yeah.
were saying, like you were really busy.
Yeah. So I first started and like I had a few different contracts come in and I'm like, whoa, all right, like I got it. And I'm one of these people who sometimes worries. So I was like, okay, like we need to make sure we have enough work coming in, that we have enough money saved. And I was taking on all this work the first month. And I decided that I was going to kind of slow it down a little bit and just focus on the companies that were easiest to work with and that aligned with my ID philosophy.
Nice.
And
Okay.
so like I backed up the number of hours. And the good thing is like a lot of these companies, when a new project is starting, um, they'll like email you and ask you like, hey, do you have time for this project? This is what it is. This is how long it'll take. So like once you're in with that company, you're in and you can accept or decline anything that comes in. So lately I've been really, accepting works enough to get by, but I haven't been killing myself. Like I've been enjoying traveling and
Nice.
spending time with my partner. And yeah, it's worked out really well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Like wondering about the work-life balance of doing this while you're traveling. So it sounds like the first month you kind of took on more than you really would have wanted to, just because you wanted to make sure like you weren't gonna have to worry about like getting by. And then once
Yeah.
you realize, hey, this is gonna work out just fine, you're finding some companies you work better with than others, you scaled it back, and now you have a pretty good balance, it sounds like, between doing the work and enjoying yourself while you're abroad.
Yeah, I love it. It's like it's really awesome. If I want to take the day off, like oftentimes I can, as long as I'm not in the middle of a big project that has a tight deadline.
Yeah.
Um, so like I love it. Like, and one thing I should mention is um, you don't necessarily have to work in the same time zone as these companies that you're working with. So like oftentimes, since like you're in Europe and a lot of these companies are in North America, there will be a time difference. Um, one thing that I always did to just make it easier for the companies is I always tried to join the daily meeting whenever it would commence. So sometimes it'd be like 7 p.m. my time, and I would just jump in the daily meeting, even though I was doing most of the work in my own time zone. So I was working like, 8 to 4 or less. But I would always jump in those meetings. They were never very long. And
Oh,
uh, since they knew about my situation, they knew, okay, like Chris will get at this like tomorrow in his time. And by the time we wake up, it's going to be finished. So,
yeah. Okay,
yeah.
cool. So you were like making an effort basically, just showing up to meetings when you can. And yeah, everyone kind of knew that was the understanding. If you get the work done, like we're
Yeah.
okay, basically.
Like it's about like being honest and trying to make it easier for them.
Yeah.
I didn't want to risk like, being like, oh, can we have this meeting? Can we move the team meeting earlier to accommodate myself? I
Right,
just
I
thought
see.
like, okay, let's just jump in this meeting. It's like usually less than an hour, oftentimes less than 30 minutes. It's not a big deal to jump in. So
Okay.
yeah, that's what I would do.
Nice. And
Yeah.
then, okay, so and this is your final stop on this 6-month journey, right? Montpellier?
One more stop.
Oh, one more stop. Nice.
Yeah, we're going to Split, Croatia next month.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So what's next though after this journey? So traveling all around Europe after this, yeah, what's in store for you?
Yeah, so I landed a job in Canada with
Yeah.
a big company, and yeah, like it's super exciting. It was kind of funny because I interviewed with them before I left, and the interview process, like a lot of these big companies, there were several rounds, and it took a while. Um, and along this time, like we were still thinking about traveling, and I made it to the last round of the interview, and they asked me if anything had changed about my job situation. And I said, well, like a little bit, yes. Like I I'm doing this thing where like I'm going abroad for a while, and but I'll be coming back. So they actually said that, okay, like we'll wait for you. So
Yeah.
they waited. Yeah, they were really flexible and really great about it. So um, they're waiting until I return to Canada, and I'll be starting a job when I return to Canada.
So with your volunteer and your part-time ID experience and your portfolio in progress on a Google Doc, you weren't just able to freelance successfully for 6 months abroad, you also were able to secure a full-time job at the beginning of that, and they're willing to wait for you for 6 months to finish up your travels and get back to Canada.
Yeah, no, it really worked out well, and I
No, yeah,
really do.
you really figured out the code here with this one, like, that's nice, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that
and
probably helps too going into it, knowing you have the full-time role waiting for you, like, when you get back, I would imagine.
yeah, no, and like you when you say it like that, Devlin, it makes it seem like I'm killing it, and like I am very lucky to have landed those opportunities, but there were lots of times where I was applying for hundreds of jobs and there were just
Yeah.
crickets, like where I was given tasks to do, and I would spend 10 hours doing these tasks only to be ghosted by an employer.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some setbacks along the way. But what I tried to do was um, to try things in a different way when my original approach didn't work.
Yeah.
Um, so I saw in the beginning like applying for as many jobs as possible wasn't the best strategy. Um, so I altered my approach. I got to know these companies better. Um, I got some experience. I worked on my portfolio, and everything together ended up in me landing this full time job. So
Nice.
yeah, it worked out
Yeah,
quite
that
well.
journey, that experience sounds very similar to, like, Joanna. Joanna Capuchilli, I don't know if you were at those sessions, but some people here
Yeah.
in the audience probably were, but she kinda talked about the same thing, like, first approach was just using the resume she had and applying to, like, as many things as possible, but then kinda took a step back, reoriented to the market, and then, yeah,
Yeah.
worked on the portfolio, did more research, did more interview prep, updated that resume even further. So, yeah, I don't mean to, yeah, imply that it's like, "Oh, yeah, it's been, like, on easy mode the whole time. Everything's just happening
No, no, no.
automatically." I know you put in a ton of time, you've invested money in making this all happen, like,
Oh yeah.
it
I
takes a
just want
lot.
everyone
Yeah.
out there like who is going through a similar experience to understand that, if you might be having a hard time now landing a job, things will get easier as long as you try changing your approach, try to avoid getting in the front door, like the typical approach, and try to see if there's a side door that you can go in, if there's a different way you can approach it that
Yeah.
other people aren't doing. And
Yeah,
that's,
that's good perspective. And
yeah,
I'm just
well,
yeah, I'm
that
just
approach
happy
would
for
work.
you that, yeah, it all kinda worked out this way and you're able to have your travels and not be, like, overworking yourself, worrying about money or anything like that, like, while you're out there, so, I'm happy it worked out. I know we have a lot of questions that came in. So yeah, let's see if we can help some people with some some things that we may have missed or some more specific things to some people's situations. So,
Yeah, for
ready to
sure.
dive into them?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, our top question is about how you sourced contract gigs. I think we answered that one probably after this question was asked.
Yeah, like I could go over it again quickly. I simply used Google and I searched up companies. I made a list of those companies. So start by like looking for companies maybe around your area. That was one of the approaches that I took, just like companies in my province or companies in my state. Uh, sorry, instructional design companies. And I collected the emails and I went on the websites for all the companies. And like originally, I had like 50 different companies. And after going down the list, like I filtered it to, you know, uh, 10, and I went on their websites and I saw which ones aligned best with me. And I sent them a personalized email, like every single one. I didn't look at the career section of the websites, like to see if there was a job posted. I just assumed they're doing work. Uh, they always need new people. So let's just send them an email. And, if you give them a personalized email, oftentimes people will respond back. And, sometimes if they don't respond back, it's not the worst thing in the world to, send them another email like in a week or two to be persistent. Just always being respectful, being like, hey, just checking in to see if like you received my email. Like, I'm really excited to learn more about your company. Um, if you don't have the time to chat right now, no problem. Maybe we'll cross paths again. Like always giving them that out in the email, I think is important because at the end of the day, people are busy and they don't always have time to hop on a call with you or offer you a job interview right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Good point. And yeah, I know it's always like a numbers game with like direct outreach. And I know, yeah, there's power in the follow up and all of that. And I can see how that personalized approach would be more effective than like a very obviously templated kind of email where it's like, okay, I'm getting spammed.
Yeah.
So that's good.
One of the things that I always did too, like the subject line,
Yeah.
I always put it as quick question.
Yeah.
And people were like, it seemed like we're much more likely to actually open and respond to the email if they saw the word quick there, and, being honest and actually having a shorter email to them rather than like paragraphs and paragraphs. Yeah, I found that helped.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Like I said, we haven't talked much about direct outreach on this channel, so it will be cool to see if more people are finding success with this approach. Because, like you said, yeah, these agencies they always need good people. So if you
Yeah.
have some experience or some work samples to back you up, seems like it would be a pretty good odds you'll be able to get your foot in the door with some of these agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And direct outreach has worked for me.
Hmm.
Um, I think at the end of the day, it might not work for other people, but if you keep on refining your approach, I think you can definitely get more and more people responding. And
Yeah.
maybe they don't have work for you right away, but when they do get work, oftentimes they might contact you. So,
So this leads us into this next most upvoted question from James about how you found organizations that needed volunteers for instructional designers. I'm guessing some direct outreach kind of served you well with that with that journey as well. But yeah, can you talk to us about how you landed that volunteer opportunity?
I think the easiest way for me was to find companies that were already like taking on uh, volunteer IDs because they kind of understood what an ID was, what their approach was, and how they could benefit the organization. So I did a few quick Google searches. I found some companies that were already hiring instructional designers, volunteer uh, instructional designers, and I emailed them. I cold emailed them, and it worked out well for me. I was really determined to find a place where I could volunteer, and it worked out well. Another approach you might use, it didn't necessarily work with me right away, but I've heard some people who have had success just finding companies that align with your values, whatever your values might be, and just emailing them and letting them know you're an instructional designer. In many cases, explaining what an instructional designer is, because I think a lot of people still don't even know what an instructional designer does.
Yeah.
Say what kind of services you could provide for their volunteer organization, and that you could work for free. And yeah, you have a good chance of having a lot of those people getting back to you, and you can kind of feel good about the fact that you're volunteering with an organization that aligns with your values. So that's always a plus.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense about trying to find the orgs that already are working with volunteer IDs, just because yeah, they know what you're doing, and they kind of know they already like, yeah, because I guess I worry, like, organizations that have no idea what an instructional designer is, like, it's gonna take a lot of, like it may take a lot of time, or maybe, like, risky on their end, like, we're gonna be investing our time and resources into, like, working with this person. Are we actually gonna get anything, like, valuable or useful from it? Is it gonna be a good use of our time? So
Yeah.
even though it's like you're, like, working for free, it still could be, like, a risky kind of investment of, like, time or other resources on the organization's part.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good point, Devlin, right? Because all these organizations, for all of them, like time is a very limited and expensive resource. So, yeah, having companies that already understand like what an instructional designer does, it's definitely easier to get in with them, in
Yeah, and
my
maybe,
opinion.
I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe another way to kind of make that a lower risk investment when you're reaching out to potentially volunteer with people is like letting them know what to expect. Be like, what this looks like is like, you and I just, discuss, do some discovery for like an hour or 30 minutes. And then I would need to spend like at most 2 or 3 hours with like one of your subject matter experts. And I could kind of get a, you know, proof of concept. I can get a small project for you live. Like, I don't know, but maybe kind of setting expectations around like making it a low time commitment for the volunteer organization that may help with the response rate or may help people kind of open up to it a bit more.
Yeah, that's definitely a plus. Yeah. I think it's also important, as we're on the topic, to um, ask for permission to use the projects that you do with this organization in your portfolio. I know not every organization would be able to do that, but um, that way it's definitely a win-win. Like they get something valuable, and you can use what you made in your portfolio.
Yeah, that's important. Good
Yeah.
point. Which I guess brings us to this next question from Rachel. Do you feel like companies expect freelance IDs to be really experienced since they are outsourcing the content? Rachel's a new ID and she's afraid that she doesn't have enough experience to freelance.
Right. Um, I would say that this is like a common thing, kind of like the imposter syndrome kind of mindset of like, I'm new. Uh, Other companies might not value what I have. I think at the end of the day, honesty is just the most important thing. Um, but like a lot of these companies, like, they're just looking for people to hit the ground running. So like
Yeah.
oftentimes these companies already have like a senior instructional designer on staff who is technically like an employee. Not everyone, but like they'll have senior ID. And when they land bigger projects, they look for other IDs. So for a lot of these companies, you won't necessarily be like the senior ID right away. They would have you come in and you would work under somebody else. Um, I would say you should try to get some foundational experience. You don't have to be, the best of the best, but definitely have experience storyboarding. That's one of the big ones. So if you've had experience like using storyboards, making storyboards, that's a pretty big thing. As long as you understand what they are. I'd imagine it'd be a little bit harder going in fresh without that. Um, because usually a lot of the time you're not doing development for a lot of these companies. They have like a project manager, a senior ID, people who are doing the development, and then, just a normal mid-tier instructional designer who primarily is just storyboarding. So I don't think that's outside the skill set of anybody who has been really trying to broaden their knowledge in the field. I think if you've done it a few times, if you've, done some self study and taught yourself some stuff and learned about adult learning theory and how to make learning objectives and whatnot, then you should be ready. So have confidence in what you can do. I think it's really important. And don't undersell yourself, Um, Definitely these companies, they have a shortage of time. So like if they see like, if they see like you're offering them a very low hourly rate, then sometimes they won't have as much respect for you as if you had like a fair hourly rate, because they'll assume you're not able to do the work and that you're just trying to, get in on any project that you can. So know your worth. Know that, if you've done it before, you can do it again. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, good thorough response. And Rachel, just to elaborate on that, yeah, I came into this field like right out of school basically, and I freelanced from the beginning with no like formal, full time corporate ID experience. So it's more about your skill set than like the years of experience you have. Because, like Chris mentioned, they want someone who can come in and hit the ground running. There are people with 5 years of experience who may not be skilled with like the certain tools that the team is using. But if you have a portfolio or a project or even a Google Doc that shows screenshots from a project and talks about the process, in Chris's case, as long as you actually have the skills you're discussing, if you can demonstrate that you have the skills, that's what's going to be the most valuable to people who are evaluating potential freelancers for projects like this. They want to see people who can do the job, not necessarily people who like check boxes like you need to have 3 years of experience to touch this project. No, it's like you need to have like good storyline skills, or yeah, you need to be able to write strong storyboards. And the best way to demonstrate that is to show work samples. If they see your work samples are high quality, they're like, oh yeah, we can put something like this in front of our client. So hey, you're in luck. You have a job. so so yeah, it's not like I don't think you should expect to go and like, oh, I'll learn on the job and like the senior ID will like coach me and train me and all of that. Like you definitely do need to have your skills in a good spot going into this, but I wouldn't let your like lack of like formal experience discourage you, because it is more about the skills you're building. Um,
Yeah.
and Chris, your point about not underselling yourself does lead us into the next question from Marie Noel. How do you determine what to charge your clients when you're doing contract work?
Oh, yes. This is a good
And
question.
and
And
and I just want to disclaimer, we are going to wind up doing like a full hour-long session all about pricing as a freelancer, but maybe if you just talk about, yeah, what your approach has been, what has worked for you so far.
I think a good place to start is maybe just start and do a quick Google search of what the rate might be in your area. Now, oftentimes that rate is lower. But as you talk to more companies and you get more experience, you'll have a better idea of what the going rate is. So, like, I would, like, it's funny because I've had so many conversations with these companies, and like, I'll tell them my rate, and they'll be a little bit surprised. And like, I thought my rate was high, but really it was lower than I thought. So like, yeah. So I mean, obviously, I wouldn't start like and right away and be like, yeah, $100 an hour or whatever. Um, just do a little research and maybe talk to the people. And as you have more experience having interviews, talking to different companies, you'll learn what a fair rate is. And essentially, what I do is I get more experience and I go with a new company. If I kind of like, if I was too low the last time with the next company I talked to, like I increased my rate by like $5 an hour. And that's been working out well. And there have been no complaints yet. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that is one way to do it. Start where you know, want to start, and then each new project you kind of go up. I know some people do it the other way. That maybe they do start. You know, if my hourly rate is 100, to a couple people say no, I'm gonna lower it to 90. Like some people kind of work the other
Yeah.
way back down and then work their way back up. And then there's some people who don't do hourly at all. But if you're doing subcontracting work, it's going to be a bit. It will be most subcontracting work is on hourly rates. So
Yeah.
yeah. So if you're happy to do hourly rates, yeah, there's a lot of subcontract work out there for people with the ID skills.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, and we'll have a session where we dive deeper into that. So I know that
Cool.
one is highly sought after. We have a
Yeah.
question from Emily about visas. I think we answered that about how you handled your stay in Europe. So you said you used the Portugal Youth Mobility Visa in your
Yes.
specific case, but there are other options. I know people were talking about like moving from the EU zone like to like another country and like moving back in.
Yeah.
I know there
That's
are
the way to
different
do it as well.
approaches. Yeah, in the
That's the
digital
way to do
nomad
it as
community.
well. Yeah.
Yep.
Because you can essentially like spend 3 months in EU countries or Schengen countries, they call it,
Yep.
and then
Right.
like go to non-Schengen countries, which would be like places like Croatia. And you could Google it to see the full list. But I guess we just wanted a bit more flexibility than that. And we had to fly home like through a Schengen country. So we
Mm,
didn't want to go in the airport and have them look at our passport and then, you know, be detained or something like that. So
yeah.
although it was a bit of a nuisance getting the visa, we're happy we got it. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. And then Rachel wants to know if you've run into any problems with online tools being out of the country.
Um, so a lot of these companies where you're working at as an instructional designer, at least most of them that I've encountered so far, and Devlin, you might have had a different experience, but I haven't had to use like Storyline that much. I've been primarily storyboarding.
Nice.
So, like, you know, as long as you have Microsoft Word, then you should be okay. If you do find a company where you're doing development as well, then yeah, you would need some other software. But in my like, I use Storyline for my portfolio stuff all the time, and I've had no issues. I've used Illustrator with no issues. Pretty much all of the main software, and no, I've had no issues at all.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah, the storyboarding work is generally like higher value work too. Like it's more difficult to find people with the strong instructional design and writing skill set than someone with that development piece. So that's nice that you're landing projects like that. That's good.
yeah,
Um, Someone's curious about what you do for health insurance. I don't know if you want to answer that, but I know some people. I
yeah.
don't know if you know about options. Yeah.
Well, I guess I would say it depends on how risk averse you are. I know in the states, like you guys don't have like like you need a job to have your medical insurance or whatnot. In Canada, it's a little bit different, but obviously I'm not covered if I'm going internationally. So we actually bought travel insurance, like
Nice.
expat travel insurance, and we haven't had to use it. It wasn't super expensive, but it's nice having the peace of mind that if something goes wrong, we have it. Now, mind you, a lot of these countries, you would be really surprised by how cheap healthcare is.
Yeah.
But I think you have to prepare for the worst case scenario. So I wouldn't recommend, not getting insurance and just hoping for the best.
Nice.
But obviously, everyone's situation is different. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah, travel insurance is good. I think it generally covers any like serious accidents like while you're abroad. So
Yeah.
that's nice that you have that peace of mind as well. And
Yeah.
then probably just time for a couple more questions here, but we have a question from Carmen. Um, can you share a little more about your timeline for making the decision, doing the volunteer work, transitioning into that part-time role, and then actually flying to Europe?
Yeah, no, for sure. The volunteering, it started quite a while ago, um, over a year ago.
Okay.
And then about 6 months before January, um, that was when we started like planning our trip, getting everything ready. If you do choose to get a visa, understand that it takes time. And a lot of these embassies, like, they're not always the most responsive to deal with. Like, they have so many people calling. It's not always the easiest thing in the world to like. You would think that, oh, you just go on their website and fill out the auto form and you're good. But
Yeah.
you actually have to like collect quite a few documents that you need to submit to them, and it has to be done in a very specific way. During COVID, it was slowed down quite a bit, so we're happy that we started really early. Um, so yeah, we got the visas um, going. Like, we started doing the visas 6 months beforehand. Um, Maybe 3 or 4 months removed, we started booking the Airbnbs. Um, a month here, a month there, a month there. A month seemed like a perfect amount of, excuse me, a month seemed like a perfect amount of time to spend in each place. Obviously, longer is always better, but it really allowed us to see the place and appreciate the place. So we
Yeah.
booked a month in each place about 3 months before we left. And uh, yeah, like in terms of like landing jobs, like I said before, my real contracting experience really kind of started when I was abroad. I had some smaller ones before I left. Um, but yeah, like some of them had lots of work for me, others not so much. Maybe they only had a little bit of work for me. So I really tried to diversify in the beginning and, get on with a few different companies and see who was able to give me more work and who were easier to work with. And it worked out quite well.
Nice. So you think you started the volunteering like early 2021 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. And this was when I was still a teacher.
Okay,
Um,
so you were a teacher, and then within a year, you were full-time doing contract ID work from Europe. That
yeah.
was kind of it all happened within that year for you to kinda get to Europe and find success doing the
Yeah. Like,
contract work?
I was really, I was so ready to try a different career at the time.
Yeah,
And I really, really wanted to get in the field. And I had a mindset, I'm going to find a way to do this. Like, I'm going to do it. And like, I was working on my portfolio every night
yep,
and, really grinding and like on my lunch hours as a teacher, like working on it. It was my number one priority in my life at the time.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's just like with anything, like, if you prioritize something, then often you'll find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice, and it seems like you're pretty happy with how things have been going.
Oh,
Enjoying that weather over there in Southern France right now.
we're having the best time. Like,
Yeah,
we went out to dinner, like my partner and I, and uh, our friends, and like we had this great French meal and uh,
nice.
some French wine, and yeah, it was really awesome. Like, it's been great overall. Like, I couldn't imagine things going better, and like along the way, like obviously there were lots of things that like could have made us like change course and go back. With
Yeah,
COVID happening and you know the war in uh,
yeah.
Ukraine and whatnot. But we're really happy that we're able to stay here and that we followed through.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing your journey with us and giving us some actionable tips along the way to help other people do the same. It's okay if people connect with you on LinkedIn and kind of follow along with the
Oh,
journey.
please. Yeah. No, I'm always looking to like chat with people in the ID world. Um, So please add me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I'll always get back to that as soon as I can. Yeah, I love meeting new people. So please get at me.
Nice. Okay, well, that's very nice of you. I just shared the link to your LinkedIn in the chat. Yeah, let's all give it up for Chris. Thank you, Chris. And yeah, we'll follow along with your journey and kind of see where it takes you next. So we'll talk to you soon, Chris.
Yeah, let's talk again soon. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Bye, Chris. Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
coming.